I found it in his jacket pocket while doing laundry. A photograph, glossy and warm from the dryer, showing my husband Luke pressed close to a woman I'd never seen before. Her red dress matched her lipstick, and his hand rested on the small of her back like it belonged there. My name is Kate, and until 30 seconds ago, I thought I had a perfect marriage. The laundry basket dropped from my hands, clean clothes scattering across our bedroom floor. My fingers trembled as I lifted the photo closer, studying every detail, the intimacy in their posture, the way they leaned into each other. The genuine smile on Luke's face that I hadn't seen in months. "Honey, did you wash my blue tie?" Luke's voice floated up from downstairs. I shoved the photo back into his pocket, my heart hammering. Still in the dryer, I called back, proud of how steady my voice sounded. The jacket carried an unfamiliar scent, something floral and expensive that definitely wasn't mine. "Found it." He appeared in the doorway, already dressed for work in crisp slacks and a white shirt. "What happened here?" "Dropped the basket." I started gathering clothes, keeping my eyes down. "That work event last week, the one you went to alone, were there photographers there?" He paused, adjusting his tie in the mirror. "Just the usual corporate stuff." "Why?" "No reason. Just curious." I folded a towel with mechanical precision, watching his reflection. 7 years together, and I'd never noticed how easily lies fell from his lips. "Don't forget dinner at Mom's tonight," he said, grabbing his jacket. "She's making that pasta you love." Linda. My mother-in-law would be devastated. She'd welcomed me into the family like the daughter she never had, and now I'd have to sit across from her, pretending everything was fine while her son's infidelity burned a hole in my pocket. "Right. Dinner." I forced a smile. "Wouldn't miss it." Luke kissed my cheek, and I fought the urge to wipe it away. The familiar scent of his cologne mixed with that strange perfume, making my stomach turn. "Love you," he said, already heading for the door. "Love you too." The words tasted like ash. After he left, I pulled out my phone and texted Emily, "Need you. Emergency wine night." Her response came instantly, "On my way. Bringing the good stuff." I sat on the bed, surrounded by scattered laundry, and pulled out the photo again. The woman was beautiful in that polished, corporate way, sleek hair, perfect makeup, confident smile. My fingers traced the edge of the image, catching on a tiny notation in the corner, "Rachel and Luke, Project Celebration." Rachel. Now I had a name. My phone buzzed with another text from Emily, "Should I bring ice cream too?" "Yes," I replied. "And maybe a lawyer." I tucked the photo into my bedside drawer and started getting ready for what would undoubtedly be the most excruciating family dinner of my life. Part of me wanted to scream, to call Luke and demand answers, to throw his perfectly pressed suits onto the front lawn. But something deeper, colder, was taking root. The judge's daughter in me, thanks, Dad, knew better than to show my hand too early. If Luke wanted to play games, he'd learn that I could play them too. And I played to win. The perfume bottle would be easy enough to find in his office. The emails would follow. Then the credit card statements. By the time I was done, I'd have enough evidence to bury him. I picked up his jacket again, inhaling that foreign scent. "Game on, darling," I whispered, already planning my next move. Game on. Linda's dining room smells like garlic and childhood memories. I watch Luke help his mother carry dishes to the table, playing the role of devoted son while my stomach churns with every casual lie he tells. "Katie, sweetheart, you've barely touched your wine." Linda reaches across the table, her fingers brushing my hand. "Are you feeling all right?" "Just tired." I force a smile, but my fingers tighten around the stem of my glass. End of semester stuff at school. Luke settles into his chair, loosening his tie. You work too hard, babe. Maybe you should take some time off. The concern in his voice makes me want to scream. Instead, I take a deliberate sip of wine. Actually, I've been thinking about picking up some extra classes. Summer school. But what about our trip? He frowns, a fork pausing halfway to his mouth. We talked about going to the coast. Did we? I meet his eyes. Must have slipped my mind. Like that work event last week, the one with the photographer. A muscle twitches in his jaw. Mom, this pasta is incredible. New recipe. Linda beams, launching into a story about her cooking class, while I watch Luke's shoulders relax. He thinks he's dodged the bullet. Poor, naive Luke. Oh. Before I forget, Linda jumps up, hurrying to the kitchen. I found something while cleaning out the attic. She returns with a dusty photo album, and my heart sinks. Not now. Not tonight. Your wedding photos. She places it between us, flipping pages with reverent fingers. Look how beautiful you were, Katie. And Luke, so handsome in that suit. The images mock me, white dress, perfect smile, sacred vows. My phone buzzes in my pocket, Emily, probably checking in. I ignore it. Remember our first dance? Luke's hand finds mine on the table. I don't pull away. How could I forget? You stepped on my dress 3 times. 4, Linda corrects, laughing. But you were both so happy, it didn't matter. A new photo slides from between the pages, Luke as a teenager, arms around a pretty brunette. Linda snatches it up quickly, but not before I notice the girl's striking resemblance to Rachel. Who's that? The words escape before I can stop them. Nobody, Luke says sharply. At the same moment Linda murmurs, Sarah Mitchell. The tension crackles. Luke stands abruptly, gathering plates. Mom, let me help with cleanup. Sarah was Luke's first serious girlfriend, Linda continues, ignoring her son's warning look. Such a sweet girl. They dated all through high school until... Mom. Luke's voice could freeze hell. Until what? I press, watching Luke's knuckles widen around the plate he's holding. Linda's eyes dart between us. Until she moved away for college. Luke was devastated. Ancient history, Luke mutters, disappearing into the kitchen. I lean closer to Linda. Did she look anything like Rachel from the architecture firm? The color drains from Linda's face. How do you know about Rachel? Before I can respond, Luke returns. Linda busies herself with the photo album, but her hands shake slightly. Ready to head home. Luke asks too brightly. Early meeting tomorrow. Actually, I stand slowly. I thought I might stay and help Linda clean up. Girl talk. His smile falters. You sure? It's getting late. Positive. I kiss his cheek, breathing in that familiar cologne. No trace of perfume tonight. Take the car. I'll grab an Uber. After he leaves, Linda pours more wine with trembling hands. Katie, about Rachel. How long have you known? She sinks into her chair. I saw them together last month, at that new cafe downtown. Luke said it was just work, but... She twists her wedding ring, a nervous habit I've never noticed before. I've seen that look before. On his father's face. The pieces click into place, Linda's quiet acceptance of her ex-husband's absence, her overprotectiveness of Luke. Her endless attempts to make me feel like family. History repeats itself, I murmur, reaching for my phone. Emily's text glows on the screen, found something. Call me ASAP. Not always, Linda says softly. Sometimes we can break the cycle. I look at my mother-in-law, really look at her, and see something new in her eyes. Not just sympathy, but solidarity. Yes, I reply, already planning my next move. Sometimes we can. Emily's text led me to Bellini's, the kind of overpriced Italian restaurant where deals are made over $100 bottles of wine. I'm parked across the street, watching Luke's silver Audi pull into the lot right on schedule. His important client meeting excuse still rings in my ears. My hands grip the steering wheel until my knuckles turn white. Because there she is, Rachel Parker, stepping out of her own car, smoothing that red dress that matches her lipstick perfectly. Just like in the photograph. "Got you," I whisper, reaching for my phone to record. But my fingers freeze when I see who else exits Rachel's car, Linda. My mother-in-law's presence hits me like a physical blow. She hugs Rachel, laughing at something Luke says as they walk inside together. The betrayal doubles, triples, becomes something monstrous. My phone buzzes. "Emily, status update." I can't type fast enough, Linda's here. With them. She lied to me. The response is immediate, "Holy shit. Want backup?" Before I can reply, another car pulls into the lot, a familiar black Mercedes. My father's car. James Miller, retired judge and perpetual disappointment in my life choices, steps out adjusting his tie. "What the hell?" The words escape in a strangled whisper. I abandon the car, my heels clicking against pavement as I cross the street. Through Bellini's front window, I can see them all being seated at a round table, Luke, Rachel, Linda, and now my father. Looking more animated than I've seen him in years. The hostess smiles as I enter. "Table for one." "No." My voice sounds distant, hollow. I see my party. I walk toward them in slow motion, watching their faces change as they notice me. Luke goes pale. Rachel's hand jerks away from his arm. Linda's wine glass freezes halfway to her lips. Only my father looks unsurprised. "Katie," he says calmly. "Right on time." "Time for what?" The words come out sharp enough to cut. "Sweetheart," Luke stands, reaching for me. "This isn't." "Sit down, Lucas." My father's voice carries the weight of 30 years on the bench. Luke sits. "Catherine, please join us. There are things you need to hear. I've heard enough lies. But I sit anyway, because that's what good daughters do." The waiter appears with water and menus. No one touches them. "Your mother wore that same expression," my father says quietly, "the day she discovered I wasn't who she thought I was." The pieces start falling into place, Linda's knowing looks, the Sarah Mitchell story, my father's sudden appearance. "You're not just Luke's co-worker," I say to Rachel. "You're Sarah Mitchell's daughter." Rachel nods slowly. I needed answers about my mother. About why she really left. "Luke was helping me. By sleeping with you." The words taste like poison. "No," Linda interrupts. "By trying to prevent the same mistakes. The same patterns." She looks at my father. "Tell her, James. Tell her everything." My father sighs, suddenly looking every one of his 60 years. Sarah Mitchell wasn't just Luke's high school girlfriend. She was my legal clerk. "And when your mother found out about our affair." "Stop." The word comes out like a gunshot. "Just stop." Luke reaches for my hand. I yank it away. "Kate, please." When Rachel came to the firm, when I realized who she was, I couldn't just. "You could have told me the truth." My voice doesn't shake. "I'm proud of that. Any of you. All of you. We were trying to protect you," Linda says softly. No. I stand, my chair scraping against the floor. You were protecting yourselves. Your secrets. Your lies. I look at each of them in turn, my faithless husband, his mother who chose loyalty to lies over truth, my father who never changed. And Rachel, the living proof of all their deceptions. Kate, Luke starts. I'll be sending divorce papers to your office. I turn to my father. And I'll be calling Mother tonight. She deserves to know everything too. I walk away from their table, their excuses, their tangled web of lies. My phone buzzes again. Emily, need extraction. Yes, I type back. And bring a lawyer. It's time to burn it all down. Behind me, I hear chairs scraping, voices rising, but I don't look back. Some fires need to spread before they can cleanse. Rachel's office is exactly what I expected, all glass and chrome, with a view of the city that probably costs more than my yearly salary. She doesn't look surprised to see me standing in her doorway. I wondered when you'd show up. She gestures to the chair across from her desk. Close the door. I remain standing. Tell me something, Rachel. Was seducing Luke part of your original plan, or just a bonus while digging up dirt on my father? Interesting assumption. She leans back, crossing her legs. That I seduced him. That this was all my idea. Wasn't it? Your father ruined my mother's life. Luke. She pauses, touching a silver frame on her desk. I recognize the woman in the photo, Sarah Mitchell, 20 years younger than the image burned in my memory from Linda's album. Luke was supposed to help me understand why. By sleeping with you. By showing me that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Her smile is razor sharp. Did you know he came to me? After finding out who I was. He said he wanted to protect you from the truth about James. My laugh sounds hollow. By having an affair. Brilliant logic. No. She opens her desk drawer, pulls out a thick manila envelope. By helping me gather evidence. Your father's pattern of affairs didn't stop with my mother, Kate. There were others. Many others. The envelope lands between us with a dull thud. Luke was going to tell you everything. After we had enough proof. She taps the envelope. Then things got complicated. You fell for him. He fell for me. Her composure cracks, just slightly. Or maybe he just fell for the idea of being someone's hero instead of another Miller family disappointment. My phone buzzes, Emily, probably with updates from the lawyer. I ignore it. Why tell me this now? Because you deserve to know that Luke's betrayal started with trying to protect you. She stands, moves to the window. Ironic, isn't it? How the road to hell is paved with family loyalty. Where is he now? After your scene at Bellini's. Probably drinking himself stupid at the Metropolitan. She turns back to me. He's there most nights lately. Drowning his guilt, I suppose. And my father. James Miller is currently boarding a flight to Singapore. Business trip, officially. Her smile returns, colder now. Running away, actually. Just like he taught Luke to do. I pick up the envelope. It's heavy with secrets, with evidence of generational betrayal. What are you going to do with all this? Rachel asks. Why do you care? Because despite everything, I loved him. She returns to her desk, picks up her phone. And because I just sent copies of everything to your mother. The floor seems to tilt beneath my feet. You what? Sometimes the best revenge isn't the one we plan. She sits down, suddenly looking tired. It's the truth we've been running from all along. My phone buzzes again. This time I look, it's my mother. After 15 years of minimal contact, her name on my screen feels like an accusation. He'll lose everything, I say quietly. The reputation he spent decades building. His position on the ethics board. Everything. Yes. Rachel nods. Just like my mother lost everything. Just like you're losing everything. She pauses. Just like Luke will lose everything. I think of Linda. Probably sitting in her kitchen with her photo albums and her memories of 2 generations of Thompson men and their perfectly justified betrayals. Thank you, I say, turning to leave. For what? For showing me that sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. I hold up the envelope. It's letting the truth do its own dirty work. As I walk out of her office, my phone buzzes a 3rd time. Luke, please come home. We need to talk. I text back, no, we don't. But I'm sure Rachel will listen. She's good at that. The elevator doors close on my reflection, a woman holding an envelope full of destruction, wearing a smile that would make Rachel proud. Sometimes the best revenge is simply stepping aside and letting karma take its course. I press the lobby button, already composing my message to Mother. It's time for all the Miller women to compare notes. The Metropolitan's dim lighting can't hide Luke's disheveled appearance. He's been here for hours, judging by the empty glasses in front of him. I slide onto the bar stool beside him, placing Rachel's envelope between us. Didn't expect to see you here, he slurs, not looking up. Didn't expect a lot of things, did we? I order a whiskey, neat. Like finding out our honeymoon villa in Bali was already booked. For you and Rachel. His hand trembles around his glass. How? Your work email password is still our wedding date. I take a slow sip. Amateur mistake. The bartender hovers nearby, sensing tension. Luke waves him away. It wasn't supposed to happen like this, he says. No. How was it supposed to happen? My phone buzzes, another message from my mother, probably. I've been ignoring them all day. Were you going to tell me about my father's affairs before or after sleeping with Sarah Mitchell's daughter? He flinches. You don't understand. Actually, I do. I tap the envelope. Rachel explained everything. Your noble crusade to protect me from Daddy's sins. Very heroic. Kate. But here's what I don't understand. I turn to face him fully. The emails planning your romantic getaway. Those started before you knew who Rachel was. Before this whole revenge plot against my father. Color drains from his face. I can explain. The thing about being married to a liar, I cut him off, is that you get really good at spotting patterns. Like how you touch your wedding ring when you're about to lie. Or how you've been deleting texts every night before bed. He reaches for the envelope. I pull it back. Don't worry, these aren't the only copies. Rachel made sure of that. I finish my whiskey. She's quite thorough, your girlfriend. Must be why my father hired her at the firm in the first place. What? Luke straightens, suddenly more alert. James hired her. Now it's my turn to smile. Amateur mistake number 2, assuming you knew who was manipulating whom. My phone buzzes again. This time I look, it's Linda, he knows. James knows everything. Be careful. You should call Rachel, I say, standing. I think she has some explaining to do about who really orchestrated this little drama. Wait. Luke grabs my arm. Whatever you're planning. I'm not planning anything. I gently remove his hand. I'm just letting the truth do what it does best, destroy everything in its path. The bartender approaches as I turn to leave. Ma'am. Your husband's tab. Ex-husband, I correct him. And he can pay his own bills. Just like Rachel can pay hers. I pause. Though I hear the firm's expense account is quite generous. Right, Luke? Outside, the night air feels clean compared to the bar's stale atmosphere. My phone lights up with a text from Rachel, "We need to talk. Your father isn't who you think he is." I type back, "Neither are you. But I'm learning." Another message from my mother appears, "Coming home tomorrow. We have much to discuss." The pieces are falling into place, but not in the way anyone expected. Not Luke, thinking he could play hero. Not Rachel, thinking she could use him for revenge. Not even my father, thinking he could control everything from behind the scenes. I flagged down a taxi, giving the driver Linda's address. She deserves to know what's coming, how both our families are about to implode in ways none of us anticipated. My phone buzzes one final time. "Emily, got the papers ready. Sure you want to do this?" I think about the web of lies, the carefully orchestrated betrayals. The way everyone thought they were the puppet master when they were really just dancing on someone else's strings. "Yes," I reply. Time to cut all the strings at once. The taxi pulls away from the Metropolitan just as Luke stumbles out, phone to his ear, probably calling Rachel. Let them scramble. Let them panic. The truth is already in motion, and not even my father can stop what's coming. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about getting free. Our first wedding anniversary dinner looks perfect from the outside. Crystal glasses catch the light, white roses fill the air with sweetness, and Luke beams at me from across the table at LeBlanc. Completely oblivious to what's coming. To us, he raises his glass. 1 year down, forever to go. I clink my glass against his, watching him drink. My own champagne remains untouched. Forever is such an interesting concept. Linda shifts in her seat beside me, her eyes darting between us. She knows something's wrong but can't quite piece it together. Good. Katie's right, my mother says, taking her seat. Her surprise appearance 10 minutes ago nearly made Luke choke on his appetizer. Forever is only as reliable as the people promising it. Luke's smile falters. "Margaret, we weren't expecting." Clearly. She smooths her napkin, every inch the judge's scorned wife. But then, expectations can be so disappointing. Right, James? My father, at the head of the table, loosens his tie slightly. Perhaps this isn't the time. 8:15, I interrupt, checking my watch. Actually, it's exactly the time. The maitre d' approaches our table, Rachel following close behind. She's wearing red again, but her usual confidence seems shaken. "I'm sorry," she says, not to Luke or me, but to my father. "I couldn't." "Sit down, Rachel." My mother's voice could freeze hell. "Since you're so fond of Thompson men, you might as well join the anniversary celebration." Luke stands so quickly his chair nearly topples. "Kate, what are you doing?" Creating a teaching moment. I finally lift my champagne. About patterns. About karma. About how secrets have a way of coming full circle. Linda reaches for her son's arm. "Luke, what's going on?" "Ask Rachel," I suggest. Or James. Or maybe start with why Sarah Mitchell's daughter just happens to work at Daddy's firm. The silence that follows feels like glass about to shatter. "You don't understand," my father starts. "Actually, I do." I pull out Rachel's envelope, now joined by a second one, thicker, older. Filled with 20 years of my mother's careful documentation. Mom explained everything. About Sarah. About the others. About how you orchestrated this whole thing with Rachel to keep Luke quiet about what he discovered. Rachel sinks into an empty chair. He promised. He promises a lot of things. My mother's smile is razor sharp. To love, to honor, to cherish. To keep secrets. To protect reputations. Luke looks like he might be sick. Linda, I can explain. Don't bother. Linda stands, her chair scraping against the floor. I've heard it all before. From your father. The maitre d' hovers uncertainly nearby. Other diners are starting to stare. A toast, I announce, rising. To patterns. To men who think they're protecting us while they're really protecting themselves. To women who keep their secrets. I lock eyes with Rachel. And to daughters who learn from their mother's mistakes. Katie, my father warns, think carefully about what you're doing. Oh, I have. I drop both envelopes on the table. Everything's already been sent to the ethics board. The divorce papers are filed. And Mom's book about her years as a judge's wife hits stores next month. Luke lunges for the envelopes, but Rachel beats him to them. She opens the older one, her hands shaking as she reads. You knew, she whispers to my father. You knew about my mother all along. This whole thing, hiring me, pushing me toward Luke, it was all to keep control of the narrative. The restaurant has gone quiet. Too quiet. Happy anniversary, I say softly, gathering my coat. The truth looks good on all of you. As I walk away, I hear chairs scraping, voices rising, accusations flying. My phone buzzes, Emily, cars waiting outside. You okay? No, I'm not okay. I'm numb. Empty. But sometimes you have to burn everything down to see what's really left standing. I step into the cool night air, leaving behind the wreckage of 2 families' worth of lies. Let them sort through the ashes. I've got my own phoenix to build. Behind me, someone calls my name. I don't turn around. Some endings don't need an audience. Emily's apartment feels like a war room. Scattered papers cover her coffee table, bank statements, emails, hotel receipts. My mother sits beside me, methodically highlighting documents while the news plays silently on TV. The doorbell rings. Emily checks her phone and nods. They're here. Luke and Rachel enter together, followed by my father. Linda slips in last, keeping her distance from everyone. Quite the performance at dinner, my father says, straightening his tie. Now can we discuss this reasonably? Reasonable. My mother's laugh is brittle. Like how you reasonably hired your ex-mistress's daughter to spy on your own family. Rachel flinches. That's not. Show them, I tell Emily. She pulls up an email on her laptop, turning it toward them. Luke's face drains of color as he reads. You were never supposed to find out, he whispers. Which part? I stand, forcing myself to stay steady. The affair. The conspiracy. Or how you and Rachel plan to expose my father's indiscretions while hiding your own. I loved you, Luke says. Everything I did was for yourself. Linda's voice cuts through the room. Just like your father. Just like James. You tell yourselves you're protecting someone, but you're really just protecting your own guilt. My father steps forward. Linda, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. She pulls out her phone, holding it up. Sarah's on video chat. Would you like to explain it to her? The screen shows a woman I recognize from old photos, older now, but still beautiful. Rachel makes a choked sound. Mom. Hello, sweetheart. Sarah's voice fills the room. James, you look exactly like I remembered. Still fixing everyone else's lives while destroying your own. Luke moves toward me. Kate, please. Don't. I back away. The ethics board has everything. Mom's book manuscript is with the publisher. It's over. Nothing's over, my father snaps. I can still. What? My mother stands. Bury it. Like you buried Sarah's career. Like you buried my self-respect. Like you buried Luke's affair to keep him quiet about your own sins. Rachel sinks onto Emily's couch. I never meant. I just wanted to know the truth about why you left, Mom. And now you do, Sarah says softly. The truth is, there are no heroes in this story. Just people too afraid to face their own reflections. Luke reaches for me again. This time I let him grab my arm. Watching his face as Emily plays the recording, his conversation with Rachel about using our honeymoon as cover for their getaway. I can explain, he starts. No need. I remove his hand. The explanation is right there, in black and white. Just like the evidence of every affair my father had. Just like the paper trail of hush money and threatened careers. The board meets tomorrow, Emily adds quietly. Everything's being reviewed. My father's composure finally cracks. Margaret, think about what this will do to our reputation. Our reputation. My mother laughs. There is no our anymore. There's just truth and consequences. And choices, Linda adds, moving to stand beside me. We all make them. We all live with them. Luke looks desperately between Rachel and me. I never meant to hurt anyone. Intention doesn't change impact, I say, echoing words my father once used in court. You taught me that, Dad. Remember. The room falls silent except for Sarah's quiet breathing through the phone. Rachel stares at her mother's image, tears streaming down her face. So what now? Luke asks. I look at each of them, my father, the righteous judge undone by his own hypocrisy, Luke. The devoted husband who became everything he claimed to hate, Rachel, the daughter seeking truth who buried herself in lies, Linda. The mother who saw history repeating itself, my mother, finally free from decades of silence. Now. I gather my coat. Now we all live with our choices. The truth is out. What happens next is up to you. I leave them there, surrounded by evidence of their own destruction. Emily follows me to the door. You okay? She whispers. I'm not. I might never be. But as I step into the night air, I feel lighter than I have in months. Sometimes winning isn't about revenge at all. Sometimes it's just about refusing to play the game anymore. The ethics board's decision arrives in a plain white envelope. I leave it unopened on Emily's kitchen counter while we pack the last of my things from Luke's house. Your mother's book hit the bestseller list, Emily says, taping another box. Luke's firm is in damage control mode. I fold another sweater, breathing in the lingering scent of our shared laundry detergent. And Rachel moved back home. Sarah got her a job at a different firm. Emily pauses. Linda called again. Of course she did. Linda's been leaving messages, each one more raw than the last. Like mother, like son, both trying to explain, to justify, to rewrite history. The doorbell rings. My father stands there, looking smaller somehow in his casual clothes. No more judge's robes to hide behind. The board's decision, he gestures at the envelope. Don't you want to know? Not really. I continue packing. The truth's already out there. The rest is just paperwork. He picks up a framed photo, my wedding day. Your mother's book is honest. I take the frame from him, wrapping it in newspaper. Something you might try sometime. I did what I thought was right. No. I meet his eyes. You did what was easy. Controlling the narrative, manipulating Rachel, using Luke's guilt to keep your own secrets. Easy. Emily slips out, giving us privacy. My father sinks onto her couch, suddenly looking every bit his age. When did you get so strong? He asks quietly. When I stopped trying to be what everyone else wanted. I sit across from him. When I realized revenge wasn't about hurting others, it was about refusing to let them hurt me anymore. The envelope sits between us, still sealed. Outside, a car door slams. Luke's voice drifts up, arguing with someone. Rachel, probably. They're both scrambling now, trying to salvage careers built on quicksand. I never meant, my father starts. To become the villain in Mom's story. To teach Luke that lies were acceptable as long as they were wrapped in good intentions. To make Rachel hate her own mother. I stand, gathering more books. Funny how our choices ripple outward, isn't it? He reaches for the envelope. I let him open it. Disbarred, he whispers. Effective immediately. Karma's not always subtle. I tape another box. Linda says hello, by the way. She and Mom are starting a support group. For women who've loved men like you. The irony almost makes me laugh, almost. My father leaves the decision letter on Emily's coffee table, next to the newspaper announcing my mother's book tour. Later, after he's gone, Emily helps me carry boxes to my new apartment. It's small, but it's mine. No memories, no ghosts, no lingering sense of betrayal. You never told me, she says, unpacking dishes. What was in that perfume bottle? The one that started all this. I pull it from my purse, Rachel's signature scent, now discontinued. Want to know something funny? It was empty the whole time. Just the glass bottle, no perfume. Like everything else in my marriage, all appearance, no substance. Emily takes it, turns it in the light. What are you going to do with it? Through the window, I can see Luke's car still parked outside. He's been sitting there for an hour, probably working up the courage to come up. Let him wait. I take the bottle back, feeling its familiar weight. Keep it. As a reminder that sometimes the smallest things, an empty perfume bottle, a photograph, a moment of truth, can change everything. And the others? Luke, Rachel, your dad. They'll live with their choices. I place the bottle on my new windowsill, where the setting sun catches it. Just like I'm living with mine. Below, Luke finally steps out of his car, looking up at my window. I don't wave. Don't acknowledge him. Some chapters need to end without resolution. The perfume bottle catches the last rays of sunlight, throwing rainbow patterns across my bare walls. Empty vessels, casting beautiful illusions. Isn't that what all our promises were, in the end? I turn away from the window, toward my new life. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even, it's about getting free.
Hi, I'm Anna. I've been with Rob for quite a while now. We met in college, got married soon after, and have been together for 15 years. Life with Rob was generally peaceful. We lived in a decent house, had good jobs, and shared a bunch of common interests. But there was always something missing, a child. You see, we tried for years to get pregnant. We visited doctors, tried different treatments, and even considered adoption. But nothing worked. As time went on, the strain of our childless reality began to pull at our once strong bond. Arguments became frequent, and the future started to look a bit gloomy. But then one day, something changed. It was a regular Wednesday morning. I woke up feeling a little queasy. Thinking it was something I ate, I brushed it off. But then I remembered. I had missed my period. Could it be? I quickly rummaged through the bathroom cupboard and found a leftover pregnancy test from years ago. Without wasting a moment, I used it, waiting for the result. The result felt like the longest 3 minutes of my life. When I finally dared to look, it was positive. My heart raced. We were pregnant. The joy, the excitement, the fear, it all rushed in. I had to tell Rob. He was in the living room, engrossed in some paperwork. Taking a deep breath, I walked up to him, the test still in my hand. "Rob," I began, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm pregnant." He looked up, his expression unreadable. Then he said, "Are you sure? I mean, at this age, is it even safe?" I was taken aback. This wasn't the reaction I was expecting. "I took the test, Rob. It's positive," I said, trying to reassure him. He sighed. "Anna, you know how hard it's been. And now, at 37, do you know the risks?" I felt a sting of hurt. "I thought you'd be happy," I whispered. "I am, I'm worried about you, about us," he replied, his voice softening a bit. "We've waited so long for this, Rob. We can't let fear dictate our happiness now," I countered. He looked down, avoiding my gaze. "Have you considered maybe not going through with it?" he asked. I couldn't believe my ears. "Terminate the pregnancy?" "No, Rob. This might be our only chance." We sat in silence for a while, the weight of our situation pressing down on both of us. I wanted him to be as overjoyed as I was, but at that moment, all I saw in his eyes was fear and uncertainty. That night, as we lay side by side in bed, I held on to hope. Hope that our child would bring us closer again. Hope that our love was strong enough to overcome any challenge, and above all, hope for the future. The next few months were tough. As days turned into weeks, it became clear that this pregnancy wasn't going to be easy. I was often sick, nauseated, and felt exhausted all the time. But each little kick from inside reminded me why it was all worth it. One day, after feeling particularly weak, I collapsed. Thankfully, Rob was home and immediately rushed me to the hospital. As I lay on the cold hospital bed, surrounded by beeping machines, I felt more vulnerable than ever before. "Is she going to be okay?" I heard Rob ask Dr. Mitchell, his voice laced with worry. "She needs rest," Dr. Mitchell replied. "Her body is under a lot of strain due to the pregnancy. It's imperative that she stays relaxed and avoids any stress." That hospital stay was the first of many. Each time I was admitted, I'd watch Rob from the window, pacing back and forth in the hospital corridor, talking on the phone, sometimes even arguing with the billing department. One evening, as I lay in the hospital bed, Rob walked in with a weary look on his face. He looked like he hadn't slept for days. "I met with Dr. Mitchell," he began. "He said we need to consider the possibility of bed rest for the remainder of the pregnancy." I nodded slowly. "If it's best for the baby, I'll do it." Rob sat down next to me, holding my hand. "I'm sorry, Anna. I wish I could do more to help." I squeezed his hand. "You're here with me, that's more than enough." However, as the days went by, Rob's visits became less frequent. Sometimes he'd call, other times he'd send a text saying he was caught up with work. But the distance between us seemed to be growing. During one of my longer hospital stays, feeling particularly low and missing the comfort of my home, I asked a nurse if I could use the phone to call Rob. "It's been 3 days," I said, trying to keep the tremor out of my voice. When he answered, "You haven't visited." "I know, Anna. It's hard for me seeing you like this," he admitted. "Rob, I need you now more than ever," I pleaded. Silence. "I'll try to come by tomorrow," he finally said, his voice distant. But tomorrow turned into the day after, and soon a week had passed. Feeling isolated and alone, I confided in my nurse, Lisa. "He's probably just scared," she suggested, trying to be comforting. Sometimes when people can't handle situations, they distance themselves. One morning, after a particularly difficult night, Dr. Mitchell came into my room. "I think it's time we discuss the birth plan, Anna," he began cautiously. "There are some decisions to be made." Rob, despite his absences, was there for that discussion. We sat hand in hand, listening to our options, praying for the strength to make the right choices. Days turned into weeks, and as the date approached, I felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. But I held on to hope, believing that once our child arrived, everything would fall into place. Little did I know, the hardest part of our journey was yet to come. The first moments of holding my daughter Emma in my arms were moments of pure bliss. Her tiny fingers, her soft cooing sounds, it felt like a dream. But that dream was quickly shattered by Dr. Mitchell's grim announcement. "Anna, Rob," he began with a heavy sigh, "there are some concerns regarding Emma's health." That evening, as I cradled Emma, Rob walked into the room, a storm brewing in his eyes. "Anna," he started, his voice shaking. "How could you? Giving birth at this age, we knew the risks." Tears welled up in my eyes. "Rob, I thought we wanted this. I thought we wanted a family." He was nearly shouting now. "You should have considered an abortion. Why bring a child into the world with so many complications because of your selfishness?" I was shocked. "Rob, she's our daughter. We should be together in this, not pointing fingers." His face was red with anger. "I can't believe I'm in this situation. I can't raise a child with potential disabilities. It's not the life I imagined." As the weight of his words sank in, a cold dread filled my heart. "So what are you saying, Rob?" He hesitated for a moment. "I don't think I can do this. I can't be here, not like this." It felt like the floor had been pulled from beneath me. "You're abandoning your daughter because she might be different?" He looked away, unable to meet my gaze. "I just can't handle it, Anna." Devastation turned into determination. "Fine. If you're leaving, then leave for good. But you'll have no claim over Emma." He didn't respond. Instead, he turned and walked away, leaving me with our newborn daughter, grappling with the uncertainty of our future. The first few weeks after Rob left were the hardest. The house felt empty, but the silence was deafening, and the reality of being a single mother weighed heavily on me. But every time I looked into Emma's big, innocent eyes, I felt a surge of determination. I was going to make sure she had the best life possible, no matter what it took. My sister Linda was a godsend during this time. She came over often, helping with household chores and looking after Emma so I could rest. One evening, as I was feeding Emma, Linda walked in holding 2 mugs of hot cocoa. "Anna," she began gently, "you need to think about the future. Have you considered finding a place of your own?" I sighed, looking around the home that held so many memories. "I've thought about it, but the thought of leaving this place, it's just hard." Linda took my hand. "I know, but think about Emma. This house will always remind you of Rob and everything that happened. You both deserve a fresh start." She was right. I needed to let go of the past and focus on building a new life for Emma and me. The search for a new place wasn't easy with my limited savings and no job. Options were limited. But then one day, Linda called me excitedly. "Anna, you won't believe what I found. There's a small house for rent in my neighborhood. It's perfect for you and Emma." I went to see the house the very next day. It was a cozy two-bedroom place with a small garden in the back. The landlord, Mrs. Peterson, was a kind elderly lady who lived next door. "Linda speaks very highly of you," Mrs. Peterson said, smiling warmly. "The place is yours if you want it." I felt tears of gratitude welling up. "Thank you, Mrs. Peterson. This means so much to me." Moving in was hectic, but with Linda's help, we managed. As I set up Emma's room, filling it with toys and her tiny clothes, a sense of peace washed over me. This was our home, our sanctuary. Linda popped her head into the room. "How's it going in here?" I smiled, hugging Emma close. "It's perfect. I can't thank you enough." She hugged us both. "That's what family is for. You're not alone in this, Anna. Remember that." Days turned into weeks, and life began to settle into a new routine. Morning walks with Emma, visits to the local park, and coffee dates with Linda became our new normal. One day, as Emma and I were playing in the garden, Mrs. Peterson walked over, holding a tray of freshly baked cookies. "Thought you two could use a treat," she said, smiling. I smiled back, taking a cookie. "Thank you, Mrs. Peterson. It's delicious." She chuckled. "Call me Ellie." Feels strange being called Mrs. Peterson by my new neighbor. We chatted as Emma giggled and played. Ellie shared stories of her own children, offering advice and wisdom. I felt a connection, a sense of community that had been missing for so long. As the days went by, the pain of the past began to fade. With the support of my sister and new friends like Ellie, I realized that while one chapter of my life had closed, another, even more beautiful one, was just beginning. Emma's first birthday was just around the corner, and I was deep in preparations. Ellie and Linda offered their assistance, suggesting ideas for decorations and games. As the day drew nearer, I found myself reflecting on the whirlwind of the past year. My baby girl, Emma, was blossoming into a bubbly, inquisitive child, her laughter a constant source of joy. One afternoon, as I was laying Emma down for her nap, the phone rang. The sound was sharp and unexpected. "Hello? Hello, Anna?" came the familiar voice. It was Dr. Mitchell. I felt a twinge of anxiety. "Dr. Mitchell, is there a problem?" He hesitated, which only deepened my concern. "Anna, I need you to come to the hospital. There's something about Emma we need to discuss." I felt my heart in my throat. "Is she okay?" His voice was thick with regret. "Please come in. We need to talk face to face." Linda agreed to watch Emma while I rushed to the hospital. The drive felt much longer than it was, my mind racing with worst-case scenarios. Dr. Mitchell greeted me in his office, his usually calm face lined with worry. "Anna, I'm so sorry to call you in this way." My patience was thinning. "What's going on?" Taking a deep breath, he began. "There's been a grave error. The initial test we ran on Emma after her birth got mixed up with another baby's." My confusion grew. "Meaning?" He met my gaze, his eyes filled with regret. "Emma is healthy, Anna. She doesn't have any medical condition." I couldn't express how deeply sorry I am. The weight of his words hit me hard. "You mean to tell me I've lived this past year under false assumptions? My life turned upside down because of this?" His voice was barely above a whisper. "Yes, and it's my responsibility. I can't begin to fathom the pain this has caused." I thought of Rob, of the bitterness and pain this mistake had caused. "It's shattered my life." Dr. Mitchell looked defeated. "I know words can't change the past, but I'll do everything I can to make it right." I took a moment to collect my thoughts. I need time to process this. Driving home, a mix of relief and fury consumed me. Yet seeing Emma's joyful face as I walked in grounded me. She was my world, and she was okay. That night, Linda and I sat down, and I relayed everything. She was horrified. Anna, what are you going to do? I looked at Emma, peacefully sleeping. For now, nothing, and I don't want Rob to know. He made his choice. Linda squeezed my hand. You're strong, Anna. Remember, you're not alone in this. In the stillness of the night, I reflected on our journey. Yes, the revelation about Emma's health was bittersweet, but one thing was for sure. I would protect and cherish her regardless of the past. The swift passage of time amazed me. Before I knew it, Emma was already 5 and gearing up for her first day of school. My feelings were a whirlwind of pride, hope, and the natural apprehension of a mother. At breakfast a few days before school, Emma gazed at me, her eyes shimmering with anticipation. Mom, will I be going to school like other kids? I smiled warmly. Yes, sweetie, in just a few days you'll be starting. Her face lit up. Will I find friends there? Will they like me? Touched by her innocence, I assured her. Emma, you're such a lovely girl. Of course they'll adore you. On her first day, dressed in her new school uniform with a pink backpack hanging from her shoulders, Emma paused at the school gates. With a quiver in her voice, she admitted, Mommy, I'm scared. No one will talk to me. I crouched to her eye level. Honey, always remember to be yourself. You're amazing and they'll see that. Just give it some time. Her small hand waved goodbye as she joined the bustling crowd of students. I watched her until she was out of sight, my heart heavy with the typical worries of a parent. A few weeks later, Emma was all excitement and stories about her new friend, Sophia. Their adventures during breaks, their shared love for painting, and their little secrets. One day she bounced home asking, Mom, can Sophia come over tomorrow? Delighted at her blossoming friendship, I agreed. Absolutely. I'm eager to meet your new buddy. The next afternoon was filled with their giggles and playful shouts. From the corner of my eye, I noticed their genuine bond and thought of how childhood friendships were so pure and uncomplicated. As the sun dipped, a car pulled up. Emma, holding Sophia's hand, led her to the door. To my shock, standing there were Rob and a young woman, presumably his new wife. Emma, inside now, Rob's voice was curt. Sophia, sensing the tension, looked worriedly between her parents and me. Daddy, I had so much fun. Emma's my best friend. Rob's gaze was cold. Sophia, we've talked about this. You shouldn't play with inferior children. His voice dripped with disdain, making it clear whom he referred to. I felt a rush of anger. Before I could retort, the young woman, probably trying to mediate, gently tugged at Sophia's hand. Come, dear, let's go home. Emma stood close to me, her eyes filled with confusion and hurt as the car drove away. Mom, why did he say that? Holding her close, I replied, Sometimes, sweetie, people don't say the nicest things. But always remember, you're wonderful just the way you are. That evening, as I tucked Emma in, I promised myself that no matter what, I'd always protect her from the cruel judgments of the world. Only days after the incident, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. A woman's voice, soft yet firm, responded. Hi, this is Emily, Sophia's mother. Can we talk? Surprised, I replied cautiously. Of course. What's on your mind? She hesitated. I'd rather discuss this face to face. Can we meet tomorrow? There's a cafe around the corner from your house. After a moment, I agreed. All right, see you at 10 a.m. The next morning, I saw Emily waiting. She looked out of place, her pristine appearance contrasting with the laid-back vibe of the cafe. As I approached, she stood up, offering a polite if slightly forced smile. "Thank you for coming," she began, her eyes searching mine. After the other day, I couldn't shake off a nagging feeling that there's more to the story than Rob's told me. I took a deep breath. I'm not one to spread tales, but since Sophia is involved, I think you should know. She leaned forward, anticipation evident. "Please tell me everything." Over the next hour, I unfolded our past, how Rob and I had struggled with fertility, my unexpected pregnancy, his disinterest, the misdiagnosis, his leaving, and my subsequent journey with Emma. I made sure to be factual, not letting emotion color the narrative. Emily sat stunned. "He never told me any of this. He said you were the one who left him, and he always painted such a rosy picture of your marriage." I shrugged. "Sometimes people craft stories to cope or to hide." She looked defeated. "I feel like such a fool. I thought our love was genuine, but now it seems like he was just replacing one life with another." "Emily," I started, my tone firm, "it's not about him anymore. It's about Sophia and Emma. They formed a bond. I don't want Emma to suffer because of our past." She nodded. "I completely agree. Children shouldn't be dragged into adult disputes." As we parted, I felt a weight lifted. For the first time, I felt like I was truly free from Rob's shadow. Having laid our past bare that evening as Emma played with her toys, she looked up. "Mom, will I see Sophia again?" Smiling, I said, "Yes, sweetie, you will. And always remember, your past doesn't define your future. You do." My phone buzzed on the coffee table, startling me from my thoughts. Rob's name flashed on the screen, a name I hadn't expected to see in a long time. Hesitating for only a moment, I answered. "Anna." Rob's voice was filled with a mix of anger and desperation. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" I frowned, taken aback. "What are you talking about?" His voice grew softer, almost pleading. "Do you have any idea what you've done? Emily left me, she filed for divorce, and she's taken everything. Everything. I've lost almost everything, Anna, and it's all because she spoke to you." I could hardly believe what I was hearing. "Rob, you made your choices." I just told her the truth. There was a heavy pause. "She also told me about Emma, that she's healthy. You never told me. Why would I? After everything you said, after everything you did, you didn't deserve to know," I retorted. Rob's voice grew desperate. "Anna, I made a mistake. I realize that now. I want to be there for Emma. I want to be there for you. We can be a family again." I scoffed in disbelief. "Now that your life's in shambles, you suddenly want us back? You're unbelievable, Rob." "Anna, I know I messed up, but I've changed. Please give me a chance." I could feel anger rising in me. "You walked out on us, Rob. You called our daughter inferior and turned your back. Now that your little fairy tale with Emily has ended, you think you can just waltz back into our lives? Think again." He sounded desperate. "Anna, I was wrong. I see that now. Can't you give me another chance?" "No," I replied firmly. "Emma and I have moved on. We're doing just fine without you, and we don't need or want you in our lives." "But Anna, it's over, Rob. Goodbye." I ended the call, my heart racing. I took a deep breath, letting the emotions wash over me. Emma and I had each other, and that was all that mattered. I wouldn't let Rob's selfishness disrupt our peace. Whatever challenges lay ahead, we'd face them together.
The night of our 20th wedding anniversary should have been a celebration, but it unveiled a truth that shattered my world. I had planned a romantic evening, Darren's favorite meal, followed by the gift I'd been secretly saving for. But when I reached into his jacket pocket to retrieve the theater tickets, my fingers brushed against an odd rectangular shape. Pulling it out, my heart stopped as I stared at the receipt for a diamond necklace from Cedars Jewelers. Darren walked in just as I was unfolding the damning piece of paper. "What's that?" he asked casually. I could barely let the words tumble out. "When were you going to give me this?" He glanced over and paled. "Oh, that! It's not for you." The room started spinning as the implication struck me. I stumbled over to the couch, my hands shaking. You bought another woman jewelry?" Darren sighed and grabbed himself a beer from the fridge like it was just another day. "Listen, Marissa, I haven't been happy for a long time. I've met someone else, someone who appreciates and desires me." My ears started ringing as he droned on about this mystery woman. I could barely process the venomous words pouring out of his mouth. "Her name is Lena, and we're in love. I want a divorce so we can stop living a lie." I stared at him, unseeing. "After 20 years? Just like that?" He shrugged nonchalantly. "I'm sorry, but it's over. God, we'll have to split assets and figure out what's best for Ethan, of course. I'm seeing a lawyer first thing tomorrow." "So that's it?" I screamed, the betrayal and humiliation burning through me. The vase of fresh roses I'd bought for our anniversary went crashing against the wall, stemming briefly splattering petals over the hardwood. "You just throw away 20 years without even trying to fix things?" Darren didn't even flinch. Darren, a detached look on his face as he studied his beer bottle. "There's nothing to fix, Marissa. We're just delaying the inevitable by staying in this loveless marriage." I wanted to claw his eyes out, rage and disbelief coursing through me. Who was this stranger casually destroying everything we had built? Then a new fear gripped me, cold and hard in the pit of my stomach. "What about Ethan?" I whispered, trying to regain some composure. "You can't take him from me." "Don't worry, we'll negotiate that too. To be honest, he'll probably want to live with me and Lena once he gets used to the idea." White-hot anger flashed through me again at the thought of some homewrecker trying to replace me as Ethan's mother. Screw being civil. This was war. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. Darren thought he could just waltz out and discard me when it suited him. But I wouldn't go down without a vicious fight. I would use every ounce of strength to protect my son and make Darren pay for throwing away our sacred vows. He was about to learn you don't terrorize a wife and mother without suffering the consequences. The night dragged on in a blur of tears and anger after Darren's bombshell confession. I barely slept, my mind spinning over his callous dismissal of our marriage vows. How could the man I loved discard me so easily for some young tart from the office? In the cold light of morning, I got my first look at the woman he'd risked everything for, Lena. Just 28 years old, with a vapid social media presence full of pouty selfies, she looked barely older than the college girls I counseled with fake breasts and hair extensions. I felt ill thinking about Darren's wandering hands on her plastic body. Over bland cereal that scratched my raw throat, I asked Ethan if he'd suspected anything. My son just shook his head, eyes vacant from the trauma of seeing his parents' marriage implode. I longed to protect him, but Darren had other ideas. "We need to talk about living situations," he said in an infuriatingly calm voice when I refused to answer his calls. "I think it's best if Ethan stays with me during the separation." Like hell, I spat, unable to mask my fury at his audacity. "You really think parading your office mattress in front of our son is appropriate?" "Don't start with the insults, Marissa. This is hard enough." My blood boiled at his feigned concern. "You threw our family away the moment you stuck your dick in that bimbo." "Mom," Ethan gasped, clearly uncomfortable witnessing our toxic exchange. "That's enough," Darren said sternly. "This hostility isn't good for Ethan. We'll discuss custody arrangements through our lawyers." "You mean your lawyers," I shot back. "Which shark did you hire to take my son away from me?" He sighed in exasperation. "Always the drama queen." Those 4 words detonated my anger into blinding fury. "Drama queen? I spent 20 years caring for our home and child while you chased money and strange." I hurled the closest object at hand, a ceramic chicken objet d'art that Darren's mother had gifted us. It shattered against the wall next to his head. "Mom, stop!" Ethan cried out. But I was seeing red. unleashing 2 decades of resentment. You never appreciated any of my sacrifices. Well, if you think I'm going down without scorched earth retribution, you're dumber than you look. Darren flinched as shrapnel pelted his designer shirt, finally seeing the menace in my eyes. Without a word, he strode out, letting the front door slam behind him. I collapsed onto the sofa, with his chest heaving, as Ethan stared at me warily. I was consumed by a new protective rage. Darren wanted to cast me and my son aside like rubbish? Well, he was in for a brutal awakening. I may have lost my husband and the life I'd known, but I would claw my way through hell to ensure Darren's ultimate demise, both professionally and personally. He wanted to see drama? I would become his worst nightmare, stopping at nothing to destroy him. Ethan didn't deserve to see this war. But I had no other choice now. The man I'd loved had become a soulless enemy, and by God, he would reap the agonizing consequences. I needed a plan. Some way to fight back against Darren's legal barracudas and regain control over my life. But I couldn't take him on alone. He held all the financial power after 2 decades of me deferring to his breadwinner status. That's when Grant, my older brother, stepped in as my first line of defense. "You can't let that bastard bully you out of everything," he growled after I spilled the whole sordid tale over a bottle of Cabernet at his place. We were kindred hot-headed spirits, a fact our parents lamented over frequently while we were young hotheads. "Easy for you to say," I sniffed, wiping away angry tears. "You're not the one being discarded like trash after sacrificing my best years." Grant slammed his fist on the table, those flashing eyes of emerald fury I knew so well. "That soon-to-be broke-dick loser husband of yours is out of his damn mind if he thinks he can treat you this way. We'll bury the son of a bitch in legal fees and public shame if we have to." I felt a surge of gratitude for having at least one person utterly on my side through this nightmare. I want to take him for everything he's worth. Every broke-dick penny. "That's my girl." Grant cracked a rare grin, that mischievous sparkle back in his eyes like when we used to egg houses as teens. "You let your big brother take the wheel on this one, sis. Old Darren doesn't know what he's in for." I returned a shaky smile back, feeling a flicker of hope despite the chaos. There would be hell to pay. I would make certain of that. No one abandons me without reaping the whirlwind. The next day, I got my second formidable ally when Sylvia, my best friend since freshman year of college, arrived on my doorstep. "I can't believe that scumbag is trying to put you out on the street," she fumed, pulling me into a rib-cracking bear hug. Despite her ferocity, just having Sylvia's presence calmed me. She'd been my rock during every major life event the past 20 years. And now, true to form, she had my back during this worst betrayal of all. "He won't get away with it," I assured her, feeling a surge of new resolve. "Grant and I have started making preparations." Sylvia's eyes narrowed to slits. "You're going to take that cheating sack down, aren't you?" I nodded, surprised at how little guilt I felt. The man I loved was gone, replaced by a selfish stranger. Mother was untamed. It was time to fight for my surrender. "Well, you're going to need compromat, all the ammo you can get on that scumbag," Sylvia said. "All business now. Financials, dirtbag stuff, anything we can use." She rubbed her hands together with relish. "I'm just the legal pit bull you need." She shot me a savage grin. "Darren wants to tango? Well, this bitch has a mean tango." Despite the coming war, I couldn't stop the startled laugh that burst from my lips. With Sylvia and Grant at my side, I suddenly had formidable reinforcements. Let the games begin. Over the next few weeks, we formed a united front, my own personal team of overlords. Sylvia brought her expertise as a top family attorney, while Grant worked his accounting contacts for intel on Darren's money trail. Slowly, I felt the shreds of my confidence and thirst for vengeance re-emerging. Darren could play the victim all he wanted, blaming me for our Marshall breakdown. But he was about to learn, in horrific detail, the catastrophic consequences of underestimating a betrayed woman. I would orchestrate his downfall through his own hubris and greed, those twin curses that caused his undoing. By the time I was through, Darren would not only be a broken man, but Ethan would finally see his father for the desiccated soul he truly was. At last, my son and I would gain the freedom to flourish without his black market toxicity. With Sylvia's dogged legal assistance, I started gathering ammunition for the war ahead. Bank statements, emails, text messages, anything that could expose Darren's rotten core and shady business dealings. It turned out Mr. Entrepreneurial Real Estate Man had been cutting quite a few unscrupulous corners over the years. Fraudulent property valuations, kickbacks from mortgage brokers, even under-the-table payoffs to building inspectors. Sylvia cackled with delight as she pored over the evidence. "This worm is going down harder than a drunk prom date," she assured me one evening over takeout curry. "No judge will let him keep the kids once they see what a scumbag deadbeat he is." I felt a grim satisfaction watching the box of incriminating files grow. Darren's affair had turned my whole existence upside down. Well, now I would return the favor by systematically dismantling his precious empire, beginning with his ruined professional reputation. But that night, the true scope of Darren's deceit took an even more sickening turn when Grant called in a panic. "Oh my God, Riss, you're not going to believe the filth I just uncovered about that little bimbo, Lena." My heart pounded as he recounted her long, calculated history of targeting wealthy married men across multiple states. Social media profiles revealed a sinister pattern of love-bombing men, getting them to leave their wives and families, then milking them for cash and gifts until she got bored and discarded them. Her trail of ruined homes and empty bank accounts spanned over a decade. "She's a professional homewrecker," I muttered numbly after hearing it all. The full depths of her predation on my family sank in, stoking the flames of hatred even higher. The scheming little monster. "Precisely," Grant growled, so full of disgust I could picture his face flushing crimson. "And that's not even the worst of it. Old pal from high school who works Vice sent over some police reports." As he laid out the grisly new details, my blood turned to ice in my veins. Arrests for solicitation, allegations of theft, stalking, and drug charges. Lena was far more nefarious than some harmless gold-digging floozy. "Oh my God," I gasped once he finished, my head spinning. "How could Darren be taken in by her?" "That's what she does, Riss," Grant said grimly. "She preys on weak, desperate losers going through a midlife crisis. That snake had her sights set on the next big score." I was shaking with revulsion, picturing Lena sinking her claws into my unwitting husband. For all my anger at Darren, he didn't deserve to be manipulated and discarded by a sociopathic criminal. I felt bile rise in my throat. Nobody plays with my family without suffering the ultimate consequences. "We need to end this now," I said, a cold finality in my voice that surprised even me. "Darren has severely underestimated who he's dealing with." There was a low chuckle on the other end. "Never did like having to learn a lesson twice, did he?" I allowed the faintest hint of a grim smile, despite my fury. "No, he never was very bright when it came to reality checks." "Well then," Grant concluded darkly, "I'd say it's high time we issue the corrective before he ruins the rest of all our lives." For the rest of that night, exhaustion eluded me as my mind whirled with the new intelligence about Lena's true evil nature. Clearly, she represented a threat far more dangerous than just a passing midlife fling. She was a calculated, immoral predator, diligently working her way through every wealthy idiot foolish enough to stray. Well, I would happily become her undoing. No one destroys my family's lives without paying a butcher's ransom in return. The time had come to use every tool in my arsenal to cut out the fetid, infected limbs dragging us down. I would stop at nothing until Darren and his degenerate whore had their worlds cremated to ashes at their feet. Only then, after being forged in the flames of their arousal selfishness, would both of them finally understand the devastation they had wrought. Vengeance may be unsavory, but sometimes it's the only deterrent for such unconscionable acts. Over the next few weeks, Darren seemed to relish flaunting his new life of sin with Lena in my face. Brazen selfies and check-ins at fancy restaurants taunted me on social media. My stomach turned watching the sordid displays of Darren draping his arms around the woman who had detonated my world. But I maintained an eerie calm, secure in the knowledge that their ego-fueled bliss was willfully oblivious to the coming storm. "Look at them," Darren sneered one afternoon, the first time Lena joined one of our interim custody meetings. He shoved his phone across the table, a photo of the smirking bimbo posing in lingerie splayed across the screen. "Isn't she incredible?" I refused to look, keeping my eyes locked on his with a withering stare. Yes, she certainly seems accomplished at her profession. Lena's heavily made-up face twisted in confusion as she opened her obliviously overlined lips. My what? Let's stay focused, Sylvia interrupted with a bemused look. She was taking undisguised glee in refereeing the humiliation that lay ahead for the gruesome twosome. Back at the house, Ethan remained sullen and withdrawn, keeping to his room and barely looking at Darren during their court-mandated visits. Infuriatingly, the affair degenerate seemed more concerned with showing off his new plaything than reconnecting with his only child. You've barely spoken to your son in weeks, I said coolly after enduring yet another long dinner disrupted by Lena's shrill, inane chatter. Darren waved a dismissive hand, eyes glassy from too much wine. He's dealing with the divorce in his own way. You know teenagers? I know betrayed kids too, I said evenly, locking eyes with the hollow shells where his soul used to reside. At least with you out of the picture, mine can finally heal from the trauma of having such a wretched, absent father. Rage flickered across Darren's face then as he realized the depths of my disgust. You smug bitch. What gives you the right to shut me out? My lips curled into a sneer of pure contempt. Still playing the victim card? That ship has sailed, asshole. Time to face the consequences of your depraved choices. Is that a threat? Lena snarled, outraged that anyone dared defy her latest married meal ticket. A promise, I hissed back with undisguised loathing. You brazen hussies think you can just take whatever families and homes you want by opening your fish holes? Time to learn some manners. Mom, please, stop. Ethan's stricken voice cut through the venom, but I was too transfixed on administering consequences to the poisonous snakes infesting our lives. You're going to regret this disrespect, Darren said in a low, menacing tone that might have cowed me years ago. I'll take everything if you force me to. I let out a bark of laughter, unable to contain my derision. For weeks, I'd allowed their circus of depravity to play out, getting them overconfident and complacent. But now their sneering, self-entitled arrogance would seal their doom. By all means, take your best shot, I said with a shrug. Nothing would make me happier than legally eviscerating you both before burning the remains. Darren's eyes widened slightly, as if finally glimpsing the full extent of what he had unleashed. I didn't bother to hide my vindictive smirk. Let him marinate in dread. It was but a faint taste of the hell to come. Sylvia slid a folder of paperwork across the table then, still grinning. We've prepared a preliminary asset division agreement for your consideration. As the sniveling fools pawed through the legalese, my gaze drifted to Ethan. His young face was etched with misery and resignation that no child should have to bear. It cemented my resolve. Ridding our lives of Darren and Lena's toxic effects was non-negotiable. They could dismiss me as some deranged, overly dramatic shrew for now, but soon their overconfident arrogance would be shattered. Underestimating me, a mother pushed to the brink, would be the first in a catastrophic series of errors, and I would luxuriate in every anguished second of their undoing. With each passing week, Darren and Lena's arrogance reached offensive new heights. Public displays of affection and taunting posts filled their social media accounts, rubbing my face in their debauched bliss. Look at this, Lena crowed one afternoon, sidling up to shove her phone in my face. It showed Darren beaming as the gold-digging whore modeled a brand-new diamond tennis bracelet he'd gifted her. Your sleazeball ex-husband has such incredible taste, doesn't he? I fixed her with a look of pure revulsion. Yes, he always did have discriminating taste in overpriced trash. Lena's heavy makeup couldn't mask the flash of rage across her vapid features. You're just a bitter, jealous old hag hanging onto the past. A cruel smile slowly spread across my lips. And you're a two-bit prostitute hanging on to whatever married scumbag will leak his billfold. Isn't that right, dear? With a shriek of incoherent fury, Lena raised her bejeweled hand to strike me. But Darren quickly grabbed her wrist, an admonishing look on his smug face. Now, ladies, let's not let our claws out in front of the boy. He shot a pointed glance toward Ethan, who was frozen in shock and embarrassment at the unseemly scene. The poor kid was being forced to witness the dregs of depravity thanks to his father's insatiable lust. See what a degenerate bitch you raised your son around all these years? Lena hissed through painted lips, struggling against Darren's grip. I'll show him what a real woman is like once the divorce is final. White-hot rage lanced through me at the thought of this scorpion mother trying to slither her way into my child's life. Ethan was paying enough for his dad's mistakes without adding Lena's poison into the equation. "Over my dead body," I snarled, rising to my feet with clenched fists. "I'll bury you in litigation for the rest of your wasted life before I let you blight my son." Darren's face hardened and he stepped between us. "You're the one who made this divorce inevitable through your constant contempt and disrespect. Don't act so above it all. Your neurotic bitterness is what's destroying this family." "Enough." The shout came not from me, but from Ethan. We all turned in stunned silence as my son gestured wildly, anguish and rage etched across his young face. "I can't take this anymore. You two are the most selfish human beings on the planet. Do you have any idea what you're putting me through?" Darren made a move toward him. "Now, son, you just need to." "Shut up!" Ethan roared, angrier than I'd ever seen. He pointed a shaking finger at Lena, who gaped like an overstuffed fish. "And you? You're nothing more than a cheap hooker trying to buy a new family." He whirled back towards his father, wild-eyed. "And you? Trading in your real family for this whore. I don't even recognize you anymore. I'm so disgusted, so ashamed of what you've become." Tears streaked down Ethan's face then, and any remaining anger melted into heartbreak. He fled from the room, unable to endure another moment of toxicity from the monsters who destroyed our family. For several long moments, an uneasy silence hung over the shattered remains of the ugly scene. I stared at Darren with a mixture of hatred and pity. This deluded fool truly had no idea the calamity he'd invited by chasing his reckless affair. Well, it was long past time I pried those scales from his willfully blind eyes. "You think this is disrespect?" I said in a low, dangerous tone. I leaned across the table, glaring straight through him. "You have no idea the world of torment I'm about to unleash on you both. Consider this a mere overture to the main event." Lena opened her mouth, possibly to shriek more indignant protests. But I silenced her with a single frigid look. "Starting tomorrow, the real games begin," I said with steel in my voice. "And by the time this is over, I'll have burned you straight through the core of your rotten, worthless souls." With that vow hanging in the air, I turned and walked out, back ramrod straight. The unraveling had officially begun. Darren and his mistress were about to reap the consequences of their despicable actions. No more Mrs. Nice Girl. From here on out, the only priority was mutually assured destruction. True to my promise, the shockwaves of my retaliation plan began rippling out the very next day. Thanks to Sylvia's tireless work, a deluge of legal motions and allegations hit Darren from every angle imaginable. First came the notices of civil lawsuits, painting him as a fraudulent real estate developer, enriching himself through graft and racketeering. A barrage of paperwork detailed inflated home valuations, kickbacks from loan officers, even bribes paid to municipal inspectors. His shady business practices, once camouflaged behind legitimate transactions, were now laid bare in painstaking detail. Next, the criminal charges started trickling in. Money laundering, tax evasion, even allegations of investment fund misappropriation. Within a matter of days, what few legitimate business dealings Darren had were frozen as authorities began seizing assets and combing through financials. The once swaggering businessman who had so casually devastated my life was now scrambling just to keep his head above water as the ocean waves crashed over him. Of course, the vulture Lena was first to cut and run once Darren's looming legal catastrophe came into focus. One sunny afternoon, she was standing on my doorstep, raccoon eyes leaking mascara, designer luggage in tow. "You did this," she wailed, blotchy face contorted with anguish. "You crazy bitch destroyed everything." I blinked at her with mocking innocence. "I'm sorry. I don't follow. My husband abandoned me, so I took reasonable recourse to protect my financial interests, completely within my legal rights." "My rights," Lena raged, stamping her foot. "I have rights, too. All of Darren's money and assets are mine now. We were starting a new life." A cruel smile twisted my lips then. "Ah, did the little gold digger's cash cow run dry? Too bad your talons couldn't sink in deep enough before we pried them out." With a scream of bilious fury, Lena hurled her oversized designer tote at me, spilling its contents across the doorstep in a jumbled mess. Then she spun on her studded heel and fled, weeping incoherently all the while. I watched her broken, despondent figure retreat down the driveway. Good riddance to that tank of tainted money and soul poison. Darren showed up later that evening, haggard and sweat-stained. He barged past me, red-faced and shaking, and started sweeping the discarded items on the porch into a box. "So is this what you wanted?" he panted, shooting me a hate-filled look. "I'm ruined, facing jail time. Is that enough justice for you?" I stared at him in cold silence, unmoved by his tantrum. For weeks, I had diligently gathered evidence of his corruption, providing a veritable roadmap for the feds to utterly dismantle his nefarious practices. And now he was reaping his deserved misery. "This is merely a down payment," I said in an arctic tone. "For every second of anguish you put me and Ethan through, I intend to excind from your flesh until you understand the meaning of the word suffering." Darren's expression flickered with a hint of worry then as my words drove home. For the first time, he seemed to truly comprehend the depthless determination behind my pursuit of vengeance. You won't get away with this," he sputtered. "I'll fight this in court. I'll take you for everything." I let out a short bark of laughter. "Oh, Darren, you sweet deluded fool, this is merely the opening salvo of consequences for your unspeakable betrayal and immorality. The body blows are still yet to come." I took a threatening step closer, eyes blazing with fury. "The utter ruination of your body, spirit, and financial empire is now an inevitability. And once you are gasping among the cinders of your miserable existence, you may yet learn an iota of the devastation your actions have caused." Darren recoiled from me then like a scalded dog, the box of Lena's hastily abandoned belongings clutched to his chest like a shield. For the briefest of moments, a flash of terror crossed his face before the mask of indignant defiance slipped back into place. "You're insane," he managed weakly. "A spiteful monster." A cruel smile twisted my lips as I reached to slam the door in his face. "No, my dear, simply a harbinger of your well-deserved descent into hell." The clang of the door closing echoed through the foyer as I walked away without a second glance. The shockwaves were still radiating outward, dismantling every facet of Darren's wretched existence, piece by agonizing piece. And I would be front and center, savoring every shriek of torment until his debt was paid in full. Only then would my own soul finally find peace. The weeks and months that followed were a legal grind, but the outcome was never in doubt. Not after I'd thoroughly dismantled every pillar of Darren's formerly comfortable existence. Arraignments, depositions, bankruptcy filings, I stalked the courthouses with grim determination, ensuring each chink in his armor was pried wider until he was left defenseless. Sylvia barely had to enter their room before judges and arbiters began sharpening their gavels for the kill. Through it all, the costly legal bombardment drained Darren's remaining assets down to husks. I watched with unconcealed delight as his expensive suits turned to rags and his prized sports cars were seized by the bank. His palatial home, the scene of countless fake idyllic evenings, was lost to foreclosure. In the end, the man who had so brazenly discarded my unwavering devotion was left with nothing but the ashes of his ruined life. Lena, of course, was long gone, just another invisible statistic among the trail of discarded married men in her wake. Darren tried negotiating, begging for mercy, even brazenly attempting to guilt me by throwing Ethan in my face. But it was far too late for that. He had detonated our sacred family unit. The consequences of his betrayal were a riptide that would sweep away every rotten thing he'd ever cherished. On the day of his final sentencing, I felt zero pity watching the husk of the man I'd once loved shuffle into the courthouse, a ghastly specter of despair in ill-fitting second-hand clothes. Greed, ego, and lust had finally caught up to him in the form of a 7-year sentence for fraud, embezzlement, and tax evasion. "Well, here we are," he said hoarsely, head hung low in defeat. "The end of the road you promised." I said nothing, staring at him coolly as Sylvia loudly shuffled some papers beside me. "Aren't you going to gloat?" Darren's voice was barely above a croak. "Give me one final kick while I'm down." I regarded him for a long moment before speaking. "Gloating would imply I took pleasure in reducing you to this," I said calmly. "The truth is, I feel nothing but revulsion at the depths of your depravity." A tremor passed across Darren's ruined face then. How could you ever let it come to this? We had 20 years of family. We had nothing. My voice was ice cold. You made the choice to sacrifice everything for selfish, temporary desire and indulgence. You cast away 2 decades of my loyalty and commitment for what? A handful of mediocre orgasms and trinkets for that disposable whore? I jabbed a finger towards him, rage resurging for one final crest. You did this to yourself, Darren. My job was simply ensuring you understood the consequences of your depraved choices. Darren opened his mouth, perhaps to grovel or plead yet again. But a booming voice interrupted from the front of the courtroom. Darren Michael Landis, you've been found guilty by this court of 32 counts of fraud and financial misdealing, as well as tax evasion. The people hereby sentence you to 84 months imprisonment in the state correctional system, with additional financial restitutions and penalties to follow. This court is adjourned. The gavel cracked down like a thunderclap, sealing the end of Darren's miserable chapter. As bailiffs moved in to escort the handcuffed wretch of a man away, he turned towards me with sunken, wretched eyes. I hope, one day, you find peace. With that, he was removed through the towering oak doors, transported off to start his hard new life of imprisonment and misery. And although his words should have vindicated me, I felt nothing but hollowness inside. The man who vowed eternal love and family was forever buried. What was left was simply karma's receipt, the remorseless cost of his transgressions come due. I watched through the courtroom windows as the armored transport pulled away, Darren becoming just another inmate, numbered drowning in the atrophy of regret and shattered potential. It would be a long road of empty cells, indignity, and iron bars ahead. But that path was of his own making. My role had simply been the messenger of his consequences. I may have swung the final hammer, but he was the one who willfully triggered his own destruction from the start. And as I stepped out into the brisk air, ready to rejoin Ethan and return to rebuilding our new lives, I felt unburdened. There would be no more poison, manipulation, or moral bankruptcy dictated by Darren's black hole of selfishness. We were free now, and I would ensure we stayed that way for the rest of our days. Kayla, why do you look so lost? Are you okay? Todd's warm breath mixed with the frosty air. His concern seemed genuine, but I could feel the tears threatening to spill. Forcing a smile, I answered, Just thinking. Let's go home and enjoy the stew I've been preparing. As we walked, the city around us bustled in Christmas cheer. The streets were lined with twinkling lights and families enjoying the season. I clung to Todd's arm, dreading the evening ahead. Our apartment, though small, was cozy and warm. Todd shrugged off his coat and tossed it over the couch, then headed straight for the kitchen. He lifted the lid on the stew pot, inhaling deeply. "Smells good," he remarked, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. I nodded, placing freshly baked bread on the table. We sat down to eat, but the tension in the room was palpable. Todd's initial warmth had faded, replaced by a cold demeanor I recognized all too well. I focused on my bowl, hoping we could get through the meal without incident. "Did you see that new couple moving in next door?" Todd asked abruptly. Caught off guard, I nodded again. "They seemed nice," I said, trying to sound casual. "Seem nice?" Todd's voice hardened. "You talked to them without telling me first?" "I just said hello, Todd. It wasn't a big deal." I kept my voice calm, my hands nervously gripping my spoon. "It is a big deal. I told you to always tell me when you talk to people." He glared at me, and I felt a familiar chill creep in. His control over me had grown stronger over the years. I used to believe his intentions were protective, born out of love. But now, sitting across from him, I saw the truth, an illusion of perfection masking a man who thrived on power and control. After dinner, Todd retreated to the living room, leaving me to clean up. I could hear the TV blaring in the background, but I stayed in the kitchen, scrubbing dishes with a focus that helped numb my thoughts. The water was scalding, but I welcomed the pain. It was a distraction. "Kayla!" Todd's voice cut through my trance. I quickly dried my hands and walked into the living room. He was on the couch, remote in hand, eyes glued to the screen. "Yes?" I asked softly. "Bring me a beer." I headed to the fridge, grabbed a can, and handed it to him. He didn't look at me. His focus was solely on the game. I stood there for a moment, waiting for some acknowledgement, some sign that he saw me. But nothing came. I was invisible to him, a mere shadow in the background of his life. Finding my voice, I said, "I'm going to bed, Todd." He grunted in response, and I turned away, heading to our bedroom. As I lay in the dark, memories of happier times bubbled up. Nana's comforting words, her wisdom about finding happiness beyond the darkness. I clung to those memories tightly, using them as a shield against the creeping despair. With Nana's words echoing in my mind, I made a silent vow. Somehow, I would find my happiness. I wouldn't let this cold, controlling life define me. As I drifted off to sleep, the city's twinkling lights were now a distant memory, replaced by the suffocating walls of our apartment and the man who trapped me within them. Little did Todd know his grip was not as strong as he thought. And one day, he would learn that the hard way. No hot sauce? Seriously, Kayla? You can't even handle a simple grocery list. Todd's voice boomed through our small apartment, his face flushed with anger. I flinched, trying to keep my composure. "I'm sorry, Todd, I must have forgotten. I'll get it tomorrow." "Forget it. You always forget. What's the point of you if you can't do anything right?" His words stung, each one a jab at my already bruised spirit. I nodded silently, refusing to let him see how his words cut me. Instead, I busied myself setting the table for breakfast. Todd stormed out of the kitchen, his footsteps heavy on the wooden floor. As I poured the coffee, Nana's voice echoed in my head, her comforting presence always a source of strength. "You'll face struggles, but you'll find happiness beyond the darkness." I wished she was here now. I could almost see her sitting at the small round table, her kind eyes filled with wisdom. But those days were gone, and I was left to navigate this overwhelming loneliness. Todd's job kept him out of the apartment during the day, which was my only solace. I planned to visit Nana today, hoping her familiar scent of lavender and old books would offer some relief. In the afternoon, I grabbed my coat and headed to Nana's house, the cold air biting at my cheeks. Her home, a small, cozy haven, welcomed me with open arms. As I stepped inside, the warmth enveloped me, and for a brief moment, I felt safe. "Kayla, there's my beautiful girl," Nana greeted me with a gentle hug. "Come, sit down, have some tea." We sat at her modest kitchen table, the steam rising from our mugs. I watched Nana as she moved around, her frail frame a stark contrast to the powerhouse of strength she embodied. "How's it going, dear?" she asked, her eyes searching mine. I hesitated. "It's been hard, Nana. Sometimes I feel so alone." Nana reached across the table, her hands gripping mine with surprising strength. "I've always told you, Kayla, you'll face struggles, but you have a fire in you. You'll find happiness. Remember that." I nodded, absorbing her words like a sponge, desperate for any bit of hope. As we talked, memories of my childhood flooded back. Sundays spent baking cookies with Nana, her laughter filling the air. She was my rock, the one constant in a world spinning out of control. After a long afternoon of sharing stories and sipping tea, I felt lighter somehow. Nana's unwavering belief in me sparked a glimmer of hope. I hugged her tightly before leaving, her soft voice a whisper in my ear. "Stay strong, Kayla. Better days are coming." Back at the apartment, the coldness hit me as soon as I stepped inside. Todd was sprawled on the couch, a beer in his hand, eyes glued to the TV screen. "Where have you been?" he demanded without looking up. "Visited Nana," I replied, hanging my coat. "Well, it's about time you got home. Make sure you don't forget the hot sauce tomorrow." I swallowed my frustration, nodding silently. As I prepared dinner, Nana's words played over in my mind, a silent chant to keep me going. Better days are coming, I told myself over and over, clinging to that flicker of hope. Todd's grip might be suffocating, but Nana's wisdom gave me strength. Somehow, I would find the courage to break free. One day, Todd would realize that his control was slipping, and my resilience would be his downfall. I awoke the next morning, feeling the weight of yesterday's visit to Nana still lingering. Her words cycled through my mind, giving me a faint sense of strength. But Todd's looming presence was a constant reminder of my reality. By midday, after completing my chores, I decided to head back to Nana's. Her home was my sanctuary, the only place where I felt any semblance of peace. I slipped out quietly, not wanting to wake Todd, who was sprawled on the couch, snoring lightly from last night's binge. Arriving at Nana's, I instantly felt calmer. She greeted me with her usual warmth, pulling me into a tight embrace. "You look tired, dear. Come and sit down," she said, leading me to the kitchen. We settled at the table, and she poured us both a cup of tea. The familiarity of her actions was comforting. "Nana, I've been thinking a lot about what you said," I admitted, tracing my finger along the edge of the cup, "about facing struggles and finding happiness." "Good," she replied, her eyes meeting mine with a knowing look. "Remember, Kayla, you'll find happiness beyond the darkness." I nodded, feeling the resolve build up inside me. "Thank you, Nana. I don't know what I'd do without you." "You'll find your way, Kayla, although the path might be hard." Feeling lighter, I left Nana's house and returned to our apartment. The weight of Todd's presence hit me immediately upon entering. He was awake now, sitting at the table with a scowl etched on his face. "What took you so long?" he demanded, his eyes narrowing. "I was visiting Nana again," I explained, setting my bag down. "You're always running off there. Maybe you should move in with her," he sneered. Ignoring his comment, I went to the kitchen to start dinner. The silence was thick, filled with unspoken tensions. I could feel Todd's eyes boring into my back as I prepared the meal. Later that evening, as we were eating, Todd's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and his demeanor shifted, a sly smirk appearing on his lips. Curiosity piqued. I watched as he typed something back, quickly and secretively. "You seem happy," I noted, unable to mask the bitterness in my voice. "I just got some good news from work," he replied nonchalantly, not looking up. After dinner, I cleaned up, my mind whirling with suspicions. Todd's secretive behavior had been growing, and my gut told me there was more to it than just work. As I lay in bed that night, Nana's words reverberated in my mind, offering a small but significant comfort. The path was undeniably hard, but I had to believe that happiness waited for me, somewhere beyond the turmoil. The next day, while Todd was at work, I decided to take a small step towards reclaiming my freedom. I visited a nearby real estate office, inquiring about small, affordable apartments. I didn't make any commitments, but gathering information was the first step towards my eventual escape. Returning home later that day, I felt a mixture of fear and empowerment. Todd was already back and met me with his usual chilly disposition. "Where have you been?" he snapped, his tone accusatory. "Just running errands," I replied casually, refusing to meet his gaze. His eyes scanned my face, searching for any hint of defiance. Finding none, he retreated to his usual spot on the couch. I busied myself with mundane tasks, my mind buzzing with the possibilities that stretched ahead. Nana's words continued to echo in my mind, a beacon guiding me through the darkness. I wasn't sure how or when, but I knew that one day I would break free. And Todd would see just how strong I could be. The day started out normal. I was grocery shopping, crossing items off the list, trying to keep my mind focused. But a strange weariness had settled over me. I ignored it, convincing myself it was just the stress of everything weighing me down. As I reached for a box of cereal, a dizzy spell hit me hard. My vision blurred, the sounds around me became distant. Before I could react, everything went dark. When I came to, I was in a hospital bed. The sterile smell filled my nostrils. A nurse noticed I was awake and rushed to my side. "You're at St. Mary's Hospital," she explained softly. "You fainted in the grocery store. We ran some tests." Confusion and fear churned within me. What tests? What did they find? The doctor walked in, carrying a clipboard. His expression was serious. "Mrs. Smith, I'm Dr. Martin. We need to discuss your results." My heart pounded. "What's wrong with me?" Dr. Martin took a deep breath. "Your blood work revealed an infection. It's an STD, Mrs. Smith, chlamydia." I stared at him, my world collapsing. "That's impossible. I've only been with my husband." Dr. Martin looked at me with a mix of pity and concern. "This type of infection typically spreads through sexual contact. It's important you inform your partner and seek treatment." Numbness washed over me as Dr. Martin continued talking, but his words became a distant echo. Todd. He had to be the source. I couldn't believe he betrayed me like this. Back at the apartment, Todd was sitting on the couch, half watching TV. I stormed in, my anger boiling over. "Todd, we need to talk," I said, my voice shaking. He barely glanced at me. "What now, Kayla?" I took a deep breath, my hands trembling. "I've never been with anyone else, Todd. Who did you give this to me from?" Todd's head snapped up, his face turning pale. "What are you talking about?" "The doctor found an STD, Todd," I said, my voice cracking. "Chlamydia. Who else have you been sleeping with?" He stood up, his eyes blazing. "Are you accusing me of something?" "Who else would it be?" I shouted back. "I've only ever been with you. You did this to me." For a moment, Todd looked like he was going to deny it, but then his expression shifted to something colder. You know what, Kayla? Maybe if you weren't so useless at home, I wouldn't have needed someone else. The room spun around me. His words cut deeper than any knife. My legs gave out, and I sank to the floor, tears streaming down my face. You betrayed me, I whispered. Todd scoffed. Get over it, it's not the end of the world. But to me it felt like it was. Any hope I had clung to was shattered. The dream of a family, children, and a life full of love was obliterated in an instant. Get out of my sight, he spat, storming out of the room. I was left alone in the cold, empty apartment, my body racked with sobs. Nana's voice echoed softly in my mind, offering a small, fragile comfort amidst the tumult. Stay strong, Kayla. Better days are coming. As broken as I felt, a new resolve settled in my heart. Todd had taken much from me, but he wouldn't take my hope. One way or another I would break free from his grasp, and he would pay for every tear he forced me to shed. I'll obey you, Todd, but remember, you asked for this, I whispered, my voice barely audible over the kettle whistling on the stove. Todd paid no attention to my words, lost in his phone, his face illuminated by the screen's blue light. He smirked and shrugged, barely looking up. Good girl. Inside, I seethed with a mixture of rage and determination. His casual dismissal only fueled my drive. That night, as he slept peacefully, I quietly slipped out of bed and headed to the closet. I pulled down an old suitcase and began packing the essentials. I made sure to be quiet, each rustle of fabric sounding deafening in the silence of the night. The next few days, I tread carefully, making sure not to alert Todd to my plans. I stashed money away, small amounts here and there, enough to get me started once I left. I contacted a few friends I could trust, securing a place to crash temporarily. Every interaction with Todd became an act. My compliance was strategic. My silence was a weapon. It was all part of a plan he never saw coming. Did you remember the groceries? Todd asked one evening, not looking up from his dinner. Yes, I picked everything up, I replied, handing him the receipt without a second thought. Good, he muttered, his attention completely on the TV. His complacency disgusted me, but it also worked in my favor. That weekend, Todd had a work event he couldn't get out of. He left the apartment early, suited up and ready to impress. I watched from the window as his car pulled away. As soon as he was out of sight, I sprang into action. I pulled out the hidden suitcase from under the bed and added the final items. I grabbed the envelope of cash I had stashed behind a loose brick in the wall. Every move was made with precision, every step a part of my silent resolve. I had already secured a temporary place with my friend Jenny, who had been more than supportive when I confided in her. You can stay as long as you need, she had assured me over the phone, her voice calm and steady. With everything packed, I took a final look around the apartment. This place had held so much promise once. Now it was just a cage, suffocating and cold. My eyes landed on a photo of Todd and me from happier times. I picked it up, feeling the weight of lost dreams in my hands. Then, with a deep breath, I set it down gently on the coffee table and walked out the door. As I locked the door behind me, I felt a strange mixture of fear and relief. Fear of the unknown and relief from the oppressive life I was leaving behind. I hurried to meet the cab waiting for me at the entrance of our building. As we sped away, I couldn't help but glance back one last time. The building shrank from view, and with it, the remnants of my life with Todd. Arriving at Jenny's place, she greeted me with a warm hug. You're safe here, she reassured me. For the first time in what felt like forever, I allowed myself to believe her. As I settled into the guest room, Nana's words echoed in my mind. Stay strong, Kayla. Better days are coming. As I lay down that night, I felt a spark of hope bloom amidst my exhaustion. Todd had underestimated me greatly. He might have broken my heart, but my spirit was far from defeated. The real journey was just beginning, and this time I would be the one in control. Why didn't you tell me about the STD, Todd? Who else are you sleeping with? My voice cut through the quiet room like a knife as Todd entered our old childhood home, now vacant, except for the memories that clung to the walls. Todd's face twisted in shocked anger. How did you find out about this place? And what the hell are you talking about? I know everything, I replied, my tone steady, years of pent-up rage and betrayal boiling over. I've been recording our conversations, Todd. Every demeaning comment, every time you raised your voice. I have it all. For a moment, Todd's confidence wavered, but his arrogance quickly returned. You think anyone will believe you? You have no proof. You're just a desperate, scorned woman. I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone, calmly pressing play on the audio files I had saved. Todd's venomous words filled the space, each one a piece of the puzzle that painted an unmistakable picture of his true nature. They'll believe me, I said, my voice stronger now. I've kept everything documented, and it's not just me, Todd. Others know too. His eyes widened, and for the first time I saw genuine fear. What do you want, Kayla? Money? Apologies? None of this will change anything. I'm not doing this for money or apologies, I stated. I want you to face the consequences of your actions. You've hurt me, deceived me, and now it's time for you to pay. Todd clenched his fist, stepping closer. You think you're tough now, Kayla? You think you can take me down? You're pathetic. Ignoring his attempt to intimidate me, I continued, You're going to come clean. You're going to face everyone and tell them the truth about who you are. A cruel laugh escaped Todd's lips. And if I don't, then I'll release these recordings. I've made sure they're in safe hands. You can't stop them from getting out, I replied, holding his gaze with unwavering determination. Todd's confidence shattered. He paced back and forth, running a hand through his hair. You're bluffing. Try me, I challenged. We both know what's at stake. Todd's face contorted with rage, but he knew he was trapped. He couldn't risk losing everything he'd built on lies. Fine, he spat out. I'll meet with your people. But this isn't over, Kayla. I stepped closer, forcing him to meet my gaze. Oh, it's just beginning, and remember, every step you take, I'll be there watching. He stormed out of the house, leaving me standing alone in the echo of his departure. My heart pounded, but I felt an overwhelming sense of justification. I had taken the first step toward reclaiming my life. As I walked out, the memories of our childhood home seemed to fade, replaced by the strength of my new resolve. Todd would soon learn that karma had a long reach, and his time of reckoning was at hand. The fight wasn't over, but for the first time, the odds were in my favor. As I headed back to Jenny's, the words Nana used to say echoed in my mind. You'll face struggles, but you'll find happiness beyond the darkness. I was ready to face whatever came next, knowing the power of my own resilience. Todd's control over me was at its end, and the real battle was about to begin. Your lies are finally catching up to you, Todd. They know everything, I said with cold satisfaction, watching him squirm in the center of his office meeting room. Todd's mask of confidence cracked entirely in that moment. His eyes darted around the room, filled with his colleagues and his boss, Mr. Jenkins. They all wore expressions of shock and disbelief as the recordings of his verbal abuse played from the speakers. What is this? Mr. Jenkins demanded, his face turning red with anger. This is not the man we thought we knew. Todd stumbled over his words, attempting to regain control. This is private. This doesn't concern my work. Kayla, you have no right. I cut him off sharply. You acted one way at home, Todd, but you can't hide anymore. Everyone sees the real you now. Sarah, one of Todd's close colleagues, stood up, her voice trembling with anger. How could you, Todd? We trusted you. We thought you were one of us, but you've been living a lie. Todd's eyes narrowed, his attempts to gather sympathy faltering. Sarah, you don't understand. This is all her doing. She's trying to ruin me. Mr. Jenkins raised a hand to silence Todd. I think we've heard enough from you, Todd. Your behavior is absolutely unacceptable. Kayla, thank you for bringing this to our attention. I nodded, my eyes never leaving Todd. I'm not doing this out of spite. This is for everyone Todd has hurt, who might hurt in the future. This is about the truth. Todd's bravado faltered entirely. He turned to Mr. Jenkins, desperation creeping into his voice. Please, I can explain. This isn't what it looks like. Mr. Jenkins shook his head. It looks exactly like what it is, Todd. You're suspended, effective immediately. We will review this thoroughly, but expect a termination, and legal charges might follow. The colleagues murmured in agreement, their trust in Todd completely shattered. Todd looked around the room, realizing that he had lost his allies, his grip on power slipping entirely. I took a step forward, my voice calm but firm. It didn't have to come to this, Todd. But you chose to deceive and manipulate. Actions have consequences. His eyes met mine, filled with a mix of anger and desperation. This isn't over, Kayla. A small, cold smile tugged at my lips. Oh, it is, and it's only fitting. I walked out of the meeting room feeling their eyes on me, but more importantly, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. Todd's reign of terror was crumbling, and justice was on the horizon. As I exited the building, the fresh air hit my face, and I took a deep, liberating breath. My phone buzzed, a message from Jenny. "How did it go?" I replied simply, "It's done." Nana's words came back to me once again, a comforting reminder of the path I had taken to get here. I knew there were still battles to fight, but the biggest one had just been won. Todd would face the fallout of his actions, and I would no longer be a victim. I walked away from that chapter of my life, feeling stronger and more resolved than ever. As I headed home, my new life, free from Todd's shadow, began to take shape. Better days were indeed coming, and I was ready to embrace every single one of them. I stood by the window, watching the snow gently blanket the streets outside. Christmas lights adorned the houses, casting a soft, inviting glow. The sounds of laughter and festive cheer floated through the air, filling me with warmth. Ethan stepped into the room, holding our daughter Emma in his arms. Her eyes sparkled with excitement as she pointed to the lights outside. "Look, Mommy, it's so pretty," I smiled, reaching out to stroke her hair. "Yes, Emma, it really is." Ethan placed Emma down, and she ran off to marvel at the Christmas tree. He came over and slipped an arm around my waist. "You okay?" he asked gently, his voice full of concern and love. "Better than okay," I replied, leaning into him. I never believed Nana when she said happiness would find me after the struggle, but here we are. Ethan kissed my forehead, a reassuring gesture that grounded me. "You've been through a lot, Kayla. I'm proud of you." The past year had been transformative. Todd's reputation had taken a massive hit, and he faced legal consequences for his actions. Meanwhile, I had built a new life with Ethan, whose kindness and love had healed so many of my wounds. Emma's laughter filled the room as she decorated the tree with sparkly ornaments. The sight of her pure joy brought a sense of completeness that I had longed for. I joined her, adding ornaments and tinsel, focusing on the present and the future filled with hope. Ethan picked up a small box from under the tree and handed it to me. "Open it," he urged, his eyes twinkling with anticipation. Curious, I unwrapped the box to find a delicate necklace with a locket. Inside was a picture of Emma and a tiny note in Ethan's handwriting, "Forever and always." Tears welled up in my eyes, but they were tears of happiness. "Thank you, Ethan. It's perfect." Emma ran over and gazed at the locket with wide eyes. "So pretty, Mommy," I smiled down at her. "Just like you, darling." Later that evening, as we sat down for dinner, the joy and love in the room were palpable. It was a striking contrast to the tense, suffocating atmosphere I had once known. Ethan held my hand under the table, a small but meaningful gesture that reminded me of how far I'd come. After dinner, we gathered around the fireplace. Ethan read Emma a Christmas story while I watched, feeling immense gratitude. The flames flickered, casting a warm glow, reminiscent of the light Nana always said would find me. Reflecting on the past, I realized that every struggle, every tear, and every moment of despair had led me to this. Nana's words had come to life in ways I couldn't have imagined back then. Happiness didn't just find me. I built it with the strength and resilience I never knew I had. As Ethan finished the story, Emma snuggled into my lap, her tiny hands gripping mine. "I love you, Mommy," she murmured sleepily. "I love you too, Emma. So much," I whispered back, my heart full. Ethan's eyes met mine over Emma's head, filled with love and pride. In his gaze, I saw the future, a future built on love, trust, and the promise of better days. Nana's prediction had come true. Beyond the darkness, I had found not just happiness, but a peace I had thought was lost forever. And with Ethan and Emma by my side, I knew we could overcome anything life threw our way. The new dawn was here, bringing with it all the joy, love, and laughter I had once feared impossible. The journey had been long and painful, but in the end, it was completely worth it. With Ethan and Emma, I was ready to embrace every beautiful moment life had to offer.